All right, sweet. So, storm chasing, training, and learning. This is just a basic little slideshow just for the basic visuals of storms because that's the most important thing out of everything. Skywarn
All
and what
right,
you're
sweet.
taught for actual
So,
storm development is actual positioning and visual learning, which not many videos actually give a visual on things. So this slideshow hopefully um, will give you that visual. This slideshow is for learning and training, and any inputs, thoughts, or ideas, feel free to share at any point in the live stream. Introduction. How do tornadoes form? First off, you need the right environment. This includes the moisture, the instability, the humidity, the wind shear, the deep level shear, yeah, all of that. The rotation, which is pretty obvious, okay? But when we're talking about the actual visuals, um, it's going past this, which you should already be past this, knowing the environment, what you need, the ingredients, um, the wrapping of the RFD, the clear slot, all of that. Basically, just a little bit of an overview. Mesocyclone, the spinning vortex, the vorticity in the air, um, inflow versus outflow and boundaries, which we will get into on the next slides. Visuals of the inflow dominant supercell. So there is a difference. There is a difference between supercells that are inflow dominant versus outflow dominant. How can you tell? Um, Miles, if anyone wants to, Luca, if anyone wants to have any like a thought on this, like what you think is an outflow or an inflow dominant storm. You don't have to speak, obviously. This is just that is true. Knox was very inflow dominant. So that warm, moist air on the ground and everything. Crazy thing is, Miles, though, Sturgis was an outflow dominant MCS storm. Mhm. Yes, 100%. So how can you differentiate, oh my gosh, differentiate between inflow and outflow dominant storms? So outflow dominant is mainly um, preceded with QLCS or MCS systems, which means more linear segments, Boeing reflectivity scans, and everything like that. If you have a more Boeing storm with a bunch of strong FFD winds, then you are likely looking at an outflow dominant storm. This also can be isolated storms, but the only times normally that they are isolated storms is when surface vorticity is quite weak, but it's more dominant the higher you go up a storm, which we don't have an image on here, but you would see more structural striations. So if you recall, Miles, during the QLCS, the derecho that happened on July 15th, you could see the pancakes that were stacked on top of each other. This typically nine times out of ten is more dominant in an outflow dominant storm. Now, typically with that, I know I said typically 100 times. Um, the pancakes and the more scary looking systems are the scary systems. and it's because of the strong FFD winds, which can exceed 100 miles an hour, which we saw in the derecho on July 15th. Um, Now, how can you tell what is an inflow dominant storm? So, this is an inflow dominant isolated supercell. Now, you can tell that this is definitely tornadic because of the wrapping of the hook. The RFD, um, obviously, the boundary isn't very visible on radar right here, but with the boundary interaction, 9 times out of 10, it would be ingested, which this could be. We don't have the full story of this supercell um, reflectivity scan, but this could potentially be the boundary being ingested, which this can happen in supercells where it actually enhances the tornadic winds due to the boundary being basically just eaten by the hook echo. So this is an inflow dominant storm. Now we can tell because it doesn't have a traditional shelf cloud. Now you may see this as a shelf cloud right here, but this is actually the horseshoe scuddy rain part of the rain free base, which this part of the storm uh, typically would not see the tornadoes over here. You would actually more see it underneath here. And the reason why is because it's inflow dominant and eating up inflow through this little tail, which, Miles, can you tell me what that is? This little part right here. This little tail. Yes, it's a tail cloud or beaver tail, which beaver tail is normally associated with more longer, flatter inflow bands, which typically proceeds with a much more violent tornado, which this right here definitely could be a tornadic supercell, as you could see with the horseshoe, which we will also get into on the next slide. I believe next slide, the other slide. Give me some of your lesser known knowledge. Do you guys know any knowledge? Obviously, you do not have to answer, but if you have any lesser known knowledge, like certain situations, you feel free to share them. That is a very good picture. Luca, you have any lesser known knowledge you want to share?
You hear me, guys? Like, good, right?
Huh? What do you say?
You okay? So, hmm, this is a little rope tornado. About to die. It's roping out clearly.
So that's very good. Obviously, we don't know the origin. I kind of just picked some images, but from this, typically what you would assume is this could be an occluding tornado with the segmented and thinner parts, which normally are typical with an occluding tornado. Typically, if it is a
Uh,
touching down or current ongoing, like getting intensifying, um, typically, this is not all the time. This is actually only like 50% of the time. The funnel actually just droops down and it's fully starting to condense to the ground. Normally, typically, it just really heavily depends, but segmented parts of it normally it means occlusion. Okay.
looks like it's from like Saskatchewan.
Did look like that, honestly, with the terrain.
Go on.
Satellite
Yeah,
imagery. So,
very flat.
oh yeah, yeah, definitely could have been anywhere, honestly. But I feel like up north, the terrain definitely looks like that. North Dakota, honestly, I can find the origin of that tornado later on. Satellite imagery. Satellite imagery is actually one of the best forms of current observations. That is the most like useful tool when you're ongoing in a chase. So before a chase, you would be using all of your models to forecast your next target, where you want to go. Satellite imagery is typically the day of chasing, and source to finding cumulus fields. Cumulus fields are what they pretty much are, said in the entire word, in the name. Cumulus fields, right here, are bubbling. Well, okay, well, they're not bubbling at this point, but they are um, obviously just fields of cumulus clouds. Now, over here to the right, you can see this sharp line. This differentiate differ oh my goodness. Diff differ I need a translator at this point. Over here is actually the stable air masses. Now, this is what we don't want. The stable air masses over here uh, are the main concern with killing a storm. This can cut out inflow. This is the less unstable air. This is actually if a bubbling supercell actually starts here, heads east, this could actually kill off the storm due to the stable air masses here. But if they're more stationary,
Anyway, so
slow
that's
moving
separate. In
storms,
fact,
LP
these servers,
supercells,
these are all separate.
this
So
is
you
a
actually can't
great
access
environment.
these from
This
RAN, the
helps
internal
with
network.
convection,
There's
with the
a
clear
wall
skies,
here. You
and the
cannot cross it,
cumulus
except for that computer in there because I have a bridge between these
sets the
two before I
bar,
turn
sets
around and
the
see it. And I will
tone
probably
for the
tear that down after
day.
this video. But
Um,
anyway, except for that
with
computer, which can
the
talk
high
across it.
convection
But
heating of
the
the
way that it'll run with this, these are
surface,
separate.
this
So that
can
means if somebody
definitely
gets it,
turn
if
into
there's an
something
attack
deadly.
surface, our attack surface
So
here,
during
even
satellite
if somebody gets
imagery,
on the network,
like
it's still not
analysis,
that big. They can
during when you're
attack
in the
in
field,
network.
you would want
Over here,
to
if somebody
aim to
attacks on
actually
the server
go
side,
along
they really
these
can't do anything internally.
bubbling
But
cumulus
it really
fields. This
separates
is
us. It
what you
lowers our
want. You
attack
do
surface. So
not
your
want
attack
to
surface is
position
basically
yourself in the stable air masses where the storm will be killed
freaking
off.
water.
If you
God.
wait for a storm to mature in
So,
these
okay, here's your
stable
attack
air
surface.
masses and actually
All
slide
right, so here's your
over
attack
and move
surface.
over here if they're like, let's say, 50
These
miles
two
an
pieces of
hour
paper
ground speed, then you would
without
be
doing anything.
disappointed when the
And
storm
when you
does
do
not
stuff,
uh,
you take part of it
become
away,
tornadic in
and
this area. So do
and
not
now
be
your attack
surprised there. You
surface
want
is
to have
like
high
an
lapse
eighth of the
rates
size that it
and
was.
stay within these
Think of
bubbling
this
cumulus
as the
fields.
amount of opportunities that a
Horseshoe versus
jackass has to
basic
mess with your
lowerings.
stuff.
So
So
this
if
is
you think
one
of it,
of
like if
the
you're throwing
best
darts with a
indicators
dartboard,
and clues in your investigation for finding where and pinpointing where a tornado will drop. So a lot of people believe that certain little formations are the tornado, which can be very, very wrong. Scuddy, lowerings doesn't LC is definitely 100% SLCs, just rising scud, can be taken as tornadoes, and sometimes even skywarn spotters slip up and report it as a tornado. Technically, if it does touch down, typically the cool air funnels are more elevated and they're, I do too, honestly. That would be a very cool, like, chase day. During your positioning on a cell that is organized, you can visibly see the free base, which that's what you want to see. Typically, in a QLCS or MCS system, you would not see a rain-free base because you do not have enough tilt. As you can see, this is the mesocyclone down here. This is where it starts. This is the updraft base. It is tilted in this direction, tilted to the right of this screen, and obviously you can see the precipitation core, which is the FFD, the forward flanking downdraft part of the storm. And as this precipitation falls, it pans back inward. because of the winds actually smashing down into the earth, which can cause the high wind speeds in typically every storm. But behind this FFD precip, you would find the rain-free base. This is the environment, the perfect tilted environment for wind shear and everything to come together below the mesocyclone where a tornado would form. Um, so right here is the wall cloud, the lowering, um, which honestly, this is not a perfect representation of a wall cloud, only because this is a more elevated LCL base. You can't visibly, too far down see a lowering, which this is actually a perfect setup to chase. Because if a tornado does drop, which honestly could even be right here, you would have a perfect visual. But it's not going to be as perfect as this. Like when you're in the field, you're not going to see a perfect wall cloud, perfect rotating base carouseling like this. Um, so I like to give more real world examples over here, with the horseshoe lowering. So this is just a basic lowering. This is what you would typically see in more textbook supercells like that. Now with textbook horseshoeing or the horseshoeing region of the storm, you would see precip falling. So here's a perfect example of a horseshoe. So in between, you can see the precip falling. Here's the FFD over here, and then you have a little inflow. So with horseshoes, you typically find them at the northeast end of the horseshoe because this is where the inflow is being taken from. As you can see, it's wrapping around right here. Here's the inflow coming up and wrapping around right here to this wall cloud. This is the lowering that you're looking for to wrap up, tighten up into a tornado. But where's the horseshoe? So follow my cursor, the horseshoe from the back here, obviously far off on the other side of this precip is where the horseshoe starts. Wraps around, wraps around the precip, and you can identify an edge. And you can see at the northeast side of the horseshoe, this is where typically the lowering would be placed. Now, this is very helpful because if you're on the other side of this precip positioned over here, you can follow the lip, follow all the way up to the northeast, and you would know that there's a tornado there. Which obviously take it as there's a tornado there because I obviously do not know that there's a tornado there, but assume that there is one. Real world quality and example, and this is one that I really wanted to put in here because obviously you're not going to have a textbook supercell every single time. So right here on the left image was the Battle Creek EF0. Now it's hard to make out, and that's what I want this image to identify. It during the Battle Creek tornado, it was more of a segmented MCS, so not a total QLCS high wind event. It's more of a segmented where little kinks in the line would pick up a little bit of a lowering and a brief tornado. You can't really amazingly see it, but beyond this image, there was a kink in the line where this edge actually came and wrapped around to the back and it would come down. So this would be the horseshoe coming around, and then you can see on the northeast end the slanted towards the FFD um, inflow, which this isn't a great horseshoe, obviously, because it's not on the back, which typically that would be. This is more of a kink in the line where inflow is being taken from the front, um, which you could see the lowering here. And you can tell it's a lowering because it's not the pointy teeth that you see in the basic shelf cloud. This is an actual and genuine lowering that you would see in a typical tornadic supercell. But because it's from the front, it would most likely be a brief or a small, weak tornado barely condensed. Image number two, credits to Jaco in our Discord group for presenting this image. This was actually in South America during a storm chase that he had. Now, you can see the clear slot. This is the very important visual clue to a tornado forming. As you can see, here's the horseshoe. Comes around, and here it is on the northeast side of that horseshoe. Follow my cursor. Boom, around this lip. Boom, there it is. Now, all this air right here without rain and the sunny skies you see, this is the clear slot. This is the part where the RFD is coming down and wrapping around. Now, this is a perfect visual and textbook to what you would expect because here's the FFD, here's the inflow coming around this section slanted towards the FFD, the precip core over here. You want to visually look for the clear slot. Does not mean you'd see sunny skies all the time. You could see darkened, hazy skies, but as long as the lowering is making that horseshoe around it, you can visibly identify that this is the clear slot. Image number three. This is a basic lowering example. This does not have the horseshoe, the classic horseshoe that we can visually identify. This does not mean that there is no horseshoe, but this is visually identifying that there isn't one from this distance. Um, the slant, the inflow tail, is coming up and wrapping around. Um, Producing a tornado, an EF2 tornado. This is during the Three Rivers EF2. But the slanting tail cloud is facing the FFD. The only time that it would not be slanting towards the FFD is if you have an abnormal directional shear, abnormal spin right to left, which would be an anti-cyclonic cyclonic tornado. But 9 times out of 10, you would see the tail cloud slanting toward or in the basic direction of the precip core. Of course, unless like a brief tornado or the kink in the line example, this does not mean all time or 90% of the time. This is just a given example for a basic lowering. And this is a textbook wall cloud, rain-free base with the precip core preceding. The whale's mouth and whale's teeth. This is very important to determining whether you should abort your chase and it's just going to be a windy hell. So the whale's mouth is a strongly outflow dominant structure region of the storm and typically means that the inflow is being lifted. So creating striations underneath the certain structure. Um, and this means that it typically is not tornadic because there is cut off inflow, so no inflow. But this could erode and produce later on. So this does not mean all the time that the chase is over, but typically due to long time taking to erode this outflow boundary, it typically means that your chase is over. Outflow, not boundary. The whale's teeth is the warm, moist air, which is typically taken as inflow if it were a tornadic storm, would be rising as a scuddy, rising SLC basically. It rises over the FFD, the cool FFD slamming into the ground, creating that structure. The teeth is the scuddy point tips in front of the shelf cloud. So typically in the very scary looking, ominous, eerie clouds with the pointy teeth, this is the whale's teeth right here, as you can visibly see. This typically means that the storm is not tornadic. 9 times out of 10, it is not tornadic. This is the biggest indicator. Um, it is a strongly outflow dominant cell. Now over here is the whale's mouth, which we did see visibly in the July 15th derecho. This is the inflow and basically all the fuel for tornadoes going up and into the garbage can. This is typically not a great sign. This is the wrap up for the slideshow. This is only part one of the series, and we covered a very small portion of the visuals of storm chasing. Feel free to direct message me or message me through my Gmail, email, any of those, if you want to add anything to the part two of visuals or any other idea for that matter. And if I messed anything up because I am still learning, also feel free to correct me. This is the questions for any of you or anyone who wants to DM me. Did you like this slideshow? Should I do it again? How was the presenter, which is me, and changes in the future? Does anyone have anything to add, or if they want to answer these? Thank you, thank you. I know it's kind of an interesting thing to like learn about, especially because it looks like a scary tornado producing storm, does it not? You know? I've seen the, teeth in Sturgis at one time. I don't think you were with me on that chase, but that was yeah, did not produce it. Actually, no, there was no teeth with that. That's what made it actually pretty tornadic that day, and that's why it produced so many, because it wasn't because of the whale teeth being not being there, it was more because of the inflow was actually being taken and not lifted up, making no, whale mouth to that. Which yeah, that's basically it. Pretty W,
Wow.
awesome.
Yeah, I learned a whole lot off of you.
Hmm,
Way more than just staring at radar, dude.
tell me when